Today on The Occult Detective, we're going to talk about Horror Mayhem. So, everybody's talking about the Horror Mayhem hashtag, and so I thought, yeah, that's definitely something I want to get involved in as well. One book I'm definitely planning on reading for that month is the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Picked this up in a little free library, and yeah, so I thought that might be a fun book to touch on. Titus Crow is a character that I've heard about quite a bit. You know, he's an occult detective battling the Cthulhu mythos creations of H.P. Lovecraft, so it's right up my alley. Why I have not read them yet, yeah, it's kind of hard to say, but so I'm tracking them down, and I expect to read my way through those for Horror Mayhem as well. I am a fan of Brian Lumley's. His Necroscope books, you know, were a big part of the 80s and 90s for me. I may revisit the first book in that series as well. So I had mentioned on Michael K. Vaughan's channel, on his Horror Mayhem discussion, that I had an interesting Brian Lumley story to share, so I thought I'd use this as an opportunity to do so. So in 2007, I attended the World Horror Convention in Toronto, and I got to meet a lot of great, just a lot of people that I was huge fans of, like Joe Lansdale and Peter Crowther and Lisa Morton, Nancy Kilpatrick. Hung out with Brian Keene, Wrath James White, Michael Arneson. Just, you know, the list goes on and on. Spent a lot of time with Greg Lamberson. Probably the most interesting interaction I had was with Lumley, and largely in part because, well, just the way it went down. So at the time, I was a heavy smoker. Such a heavy smoker that as I entered Canada, our vehicle was stopped by customs agents because they were shocked by how many cigarettes I was taking with me across the border. Not proud of it, glad I quit, but needless to say, a voracious smoker. So that World Horror Weekend, I spent a lot of time in the smoking section outside, hanging out with you know, just like a bunch of like-minded people. Kelly Owen, in particular, you know, I spent a lot of time with her. But so on that first day, I'm out there smoking, and an elderly gentleman walks up to me, and he's, you know, very well dressed, dark shirt, buttoned all the way up to the top collar with a bolero tie. And he asked me if he can bum a cigarette off of me. And he's looking around as he's asking. And, you know, he's got a British accent. And, of course, I acquiesce and give him a smoke. And he explains that he's not allowed to smoke anymore. And so he was looking to make sure his wife wasn't going to catch him. So, because he'd be in trouble. So we stood out there, and he ended up smoking like maybe 5 cigarettes. And we just talked about anything and everything, really. Primarily, though, about British folklore, King Arthur, Tintagel, you know. It just, you know, the conversation flowed easily, and he was just, you know, just a wonderful conversationalist. And so he leaves, he goes back into the convention. The next day, I'm out there about the same time, and he comes out again, conversation. We do this for 3 days, right? So on the last day of the convention, you know, I'm like, you know, I thanked him for the conversations we'd had, and Reached out and shake his hand. It's like, my name's Bob Freeman, by the way. So really enjoyed this. And he said, "Oh yeah, mate, I'm Brian Lumley." And I'm like, wow, I just spent 3 days having these terrific conversations with this guy, and I never realized that it was, the guy who wrote the Necroscope books. All the, I should have known. I don't know how it just slipped past me. I guess primarily because I don't remember an author photo attached to the books I had read. And so I guess I just didn't have a face to work recognition with him. But yeah, it was amazing. Like I said, we talked a lot about Arthurian mythos, and we talked a lot about Lovecraft, and we talked a lot about travel. He was very fond of travel, and he was very fond of the American Southwest. So we talked quite a bit about that, and I explained to him that I'd lived there for a while, and how I'd lived on the various reservations. He was just very taken with that. So yeah, it was an amazing experience, just that perhaps made all the better by my not realizing from the onset who he was. Not that I'm particularly the kind of guy who gets starstruck or anything, but had I known it was Lumley, that would have, steered the conversations perhaps in different directions. And I probably would have leaned more into his work and asking him questions about that. And that's probably the last thing he would have wanted. So yeah, we just hung out, just two guys smoking, all right? Just two guys smoking cigarettes, and there was like a mist, almost a Scottish-like mist in Toronto, as I recall, and yeah, so that really, it's a very fond memory I have. And as far as the World Horror Convention goes, it was a great experience. I hated being away from home. I had a son who was very young at the time. He's like 4, maybe 5. And it killed me to be away from him and from my wife. And yeah, I realized then that, yeah, this just doesn't work. If they can't come with me and be a part of it, then yeah, it just wasn't for me. And I think that was probably the last convention I attended. Yeah, I think it was. I like conventions. I like rubbing shoulders with fellow writers, fellow occultists, fellow artists. The subject of the convention doesn't matter. It's just being around your peers and being able to talk shop is wonderful. So if you get the opportunity, I recommend those type of activities. So let's bring it back to Horror Mayhem. Yeah, definitely going to be reading Grady Hendrix, going to be reading some Brian Lumley, and who knows, I may squeeze some other things in there as well. It's mayhem, right? Might as well make it as chaotic as possible. Alright, that's all I got for you today. Quick and easy one. I appreciate you stopping by. We'll talk again real soon.